What's up, guys? This was clipped from episode 77 of the podcast, where we just kind of recap the fights over the weekend that were headlined by Dern and Yan Xiaonan. We talked a little bit about Jake Paul, a whole bunch of different shit, right? So if you guys want to check out the full episode, I'll put the link in the description. But yeah, if you guys made your way here and enjoy the content, do me a favor, subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and let me know what you thought down in the comments. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for tuning in. I wanted to talk about one more thing, and this was a headline that I saw. And this is Jake Paul transitioning to MMA. And he said he had something set up where he is going to go fight for, a big organization. And he's talked to Javier Mendez. And, he said that he could come to AKA and train with him and Khabib. Man, what I think is going to happen, he's got to go box Anderson Silva first, right? And by the way, just to sidetrack from this MMA transition, if he can make this MMA transition or not, just a second here. Jake Paul boxing Anderson Silva scares me because Anderson Silva, regardless of what you want to say about his match against Julio Cesar Chavez, all this stuff, he's old, man. And Jake is young, and Jake has only been putting attention into boxing. And everybody keeps saying, oh, he's got a real fight in front of him now, Anderson Silva can box. Yes, he can. But Jake is big, and pressure and all that stuff matters. Do I think that Silva gives him a harder time than Tyron Woodley? For sure. For sure. I think Silva, his head movement and everything, I think that he's going to have trouble. He's going to be much more elusive than Woodley would have been. He's going to be much more selective with the strikes, much more clean, much more crisp. He's going to know when to take chances, when not to. I don't think it's easy for Jake Paul to put Anderson Silva away. But goddamn, when people start getting old, and you get somebody like Jake Paul who has legitimate knockout power, and he's young and he's big, and he can just march you down in a boxing match where you can only use your hands. Man, it is going to be a sad, sad thing if Jake Paul does manage to somehow knock out one of the greatest mixed martial artists of all time. And I'm not a fan of this fight. And not that I don't want to knock Tyron Woodley or Ben Askren for accepting either of those. I think they were great mixed martial artists as well. But Anderson Silva is Mount Rushmore type shit. And if something happens, if Jake Paul knocks out a legend in Anderson Silva, it's going to be very disappointing to the MMA community. And it's going to hurt my heart. It will. I don't like the matchup. I don't like the fight. I hope Silva goes in, does well. If I'm being completely honest with you guys, if Silva knocks him out and stuff and whatever and exposes Jake, whatever. But I think Jake is pretty good. I think he's been committing to this hard. And man, honest to God, this is all I just want Silva to get out of the fight safely. That's how I feel. I'm interested to see how Jake does. I'm interested to see how good Silva really is. But Jake is young. I'm trying to be realistic with myself. I just want Silva to make it out of the fight without getting highlight reeled or some shit. That's my opinion. Anyway, let's move on to whether he can make the MMA transition. There's a very good argument. If you look at Khabib, you look at Frankie Edgar, the two most important elements of fighting are boxing and wrestling. There are specialists like Israel Adesanya that kind of show us an exception to that rule, right? Where he really is a specialist in the striking department. He has to rely on some takedown defense and stuff like that. But in general, I think, and not that Frankie Edgar is one of the greatest of all time. He was Frankie Edgar was a bad motherfucker back in the day. Lightweight champion, right? And now he's fighting all the way down to 135. And 20 pounds when you're that little is a big gap, right? So Frankie Edgar was a bad motherfucker. But his style just came to mind when I thought of the boxing wrestling. But Khabib in particular, right? Khabib's not throwing these fancy looking fucking high kicks or question mark kicks or anything. He just wrestles you and boxes you. And Jake has a wrestling background from high school, right? And he also now has a boxing background. And when you know how to throw your hands around and you're a better striker than your opponent and you feel confident on the feet in your ability to box, it opens up sometimes opportunities for these takedown attempts. So it's not like Jake has to be a world-class wrestling expert. If he just has a good shot from high school and can use his hands to start, when he says he wants to go to AKA and work, he's going to have to work on all this, right? Obviously. But if he can start using his hands to set up his takedown attempts and get on top of somebody in an MMA fight, that's the most important thing. Can you use your hands to get to a level change, get them to the ground, and get on top and stay on top. If he can do that, you might see this motherfucker have some success. And what I think is going to happen is he's going to go train at AKA after he fights Silva. Win or lose, it's a good fight for him. I don't think he's going to get the absolute shit kicked out of him in that fight. He'll probably leave relatively healthy, go train at AKA for a year, and then go fight for Eagle FC, Habib's promotion. And they'll probably give him a relatively, like, a decent opponent, a fair opponent, and I think he could do well, because everybody always says there's a big difference in like Olympic style wrestling or freestyle wrestling and MMA wrestling, and that's 100% true. But if that's true, then you have to also assume that Jake Paul can be the sort of sponge that he was when he went into boxing and learn how to take just his shot and getting the fight to the ground and learning those elements of control and learning those differences between whatever he developed in high school up to that point and what he needs now. I think that he could bridge the gap, and I'm not kidding. I think that he could find some good success. I think that if he can use his boxing to set up the takedowns, and if they can teach him all this timing and then how to control the fight on the ground, and then just some common like methodologies and stuff about MMA and the things that he's going to need, and just like get him a game plan, I think he could do fucking well. A year spent somewhere, you can make a lot of progress, right? I'm telling you, man, he could go over and do it. I really think that. And I don't want to be the guy who's just sitting here fucking hating on Jake Paul, because so far there's nothing to really say about what he's done but fucking congrats, you know? So I'm not going to hate. I'm just interested to see how this plays out. And I do think that if he went to a world-class gym that, you know, especially AKA where it's fun. I always find the irony in the fact that it's American Kickboxing Academy. And granted, like Islam Makhachev, good kickboxer, right? And like at least in terms of like MMA standards, and Luke Rockhold, but like they're really known for their ground game, you know? They're really known for the wrestling and stuff. And it would be a good gym. Also, think about Daniel Cormier, boxing and wrestling. It would be a good matchup for Jake Paul and the base that he has, and it would be a good place for him to go and train and then make a transition into a promotion like Eagle FC. You know it's not going to be the UFC. He's got too much beef with Dana White. But you know Habib would sign Jake Paul to bring attention to his promotion too. It would all work out. I think that's what happens. I don't know. I think he could fucking do it. And I think you might see Jake Paul fight in MMA at the end of 2023 or early 2024.